We'll just do the onboard. It's on internal right now.
Up by Lopez, dug by Westerfield. Spidel giving it to Bowder, who rolls it into the net. Point for the Eagles. Eagles coming into this afternoon's matchup 4-2, 0-2 in MAC Freedom Conference. This is a conference match right here. Misericordia 8-7 coming into this match, 1-2 in conference. And that's number 15, Noah Westbrook, missing the serve. Point Cougars is number 23, Caleb Bowder, heads back to serve. Thompson from Bowder by Lopez. And that pass is over now. Ace for Caleb Bowder. Point Cougars. (10-4), Cougars with the lead as Bowder continues to serve. Off the top of the tape, up by Smith. Going to Lopez in the back row, dug by West, and that'll be a kill for Smith out of that big attack. Point Eagles. Eagles head coach Randy Syracuse. Cougars coached by Rob Wingert. As number 12, Knob, is back to serve. And that serve is wide. Point for Misericordia. As number 13, Matt Lavin, heads back to serve. Billy Murphy checks back in front row. Float serve for Lavin, and that drops inside the line. Ace for Matt Lavin, point Cougars. Lavin continuing to serve. Up by Lopez. Going to Smith, scramble play, Cougars send the free ball over. Up by Knob, dump over on 2 by setter Cameron Parsons, point 4 Eastern. Holbert back to serve, and that float is out of bounds, point 4 Misericordia. Up by Knob, going out to Lopez, and Lopez gets the kill off the hands of Brian Ross and Billy Murphy at the net. Point Eastern. Score 13-7, Misericordia with the lead. As number 22, Smith is back to serve. He'll have a float serve. Up by Bowder. Spidel giving it out to Ross, who swings. He's blocked, he covers. Scramble play at the net, free ball by Miller. Up by Smith. Going back to Westbrook, he's dug. Spidel giving it back to Miller, and Miller's tip is out of bounds. Point 4 the Eagles. Smith continuing to serve. Up by Bowder, and that'll be an ace for Smith as Bowder mishandles that hand pass. Point 4 Eastern. Float serve by Smith, and that's out of bounds. Point 4 the Cougars. Number 7, Ryan Miller heading back to serve. Miller will have a top spin. Up by Holbert, going out to Lopez, and Lopez gets the kill. Point 4 the Eagles. As number 5, Parsons heads back to serve. Float serve up by Westerfield. Spidel out to Bowder. Bowder is blocked by number 12, Christian Knob. Point 4 the Eagles. Eagles pull within 3, 14-11. Cougars with the lead. Short float up by Westerfield, going back to Ross, and Ross gets the kill on the right side. Point 4 the Cougars. Substitution on the Cougar side, number 21 Matt Churchill checking in to serve for Billy Murphy. Float serve up by Lopez, going back to Lopez. And Lopez gets the kill high off the hands of Caleb Bowder. Point 4 the Eagles. Top spin by Lopez. Up by Miller. Spidel running it down. Bowder taking a swing. Up by Lopez. Dug by Miller. Lavin over on 2. Scramble play. Holbert taking a swing. Up by Spidel. Westerfield giving it to Ross. Dug by Lopez. Going back to Knob, and Knob gets the kill off the hands of number 23, Caleb Bowder. As Eastern pulls within 2, 15-13. Volleyball sets played to 25, must win by 2. Best of 5 sets as Lopez heads back to serve, and he'll have a top spin. That's service error from Lopez, point 4 the Cougars. Number 32, Brian Ross back to serve. Ball's going out to Holbert. He's dug over on 1. Holbert with the dig, Back Westerfield making the dig this time as Bowder tips it over, up by Lopez. Parsons out to Holbert, and Holbert has the attack error, point for the Cougars. .32 Brian Ross back to serve. Float serve up by Lopez. Going out to Holbert. And Holbert gets the kill. Point for Eastern. 17-14 in the first set. Cougars up by 3. Float serve from Westbrook. And it's out of bounds, point for the Cougars. Number 23, Caleb Bowder back to serve. Bowder will have a topspin. Up by Lopez. And that's going to be a kill by number 22, Anthony Smith. Assist by Cameron Parsons. Point Eastern. Knob with the topspin that drops out of bounds. Point for the Cougars. (19-15). The score is Matt Lavin's behind the line for the Cougars, up by Lopez. Going out to Holbert. Holbert is blocked, but that block out of bounds. Point for Eastern. Kill for number 6, Nicholas Holbert, as he'll head behind the line to serve for Eastern. Eastern trailing by 3, 19-16. Up by Miller, Speidel to Miller in the middle. Miller is blocked, covered by Westerfield. Speidel swinging on the second contact and getting the kill. Point for Misericordia. First year setter, number 8, Jordan Speidel back to serve. He'll have a float serve. And that's out of bounds, point for Eastern. As number 22, Anthony Smith, is back to serve for the Eagles. Float serve up by Westerfield. Speidel giving it back to Miller. And Miller gets the kill on the right side, point for the Cougars. Number 7, Ryan Miller heading back to serve for Misericordia. He'll have a topspin. Up by Lopez. Parsons giving it out to Lopez. Lopez dug by Miller. Bowder keeping alive. Free ball by Miller. Up by Holbert, going out to Lopez. And Lopez gets the kill down the line. Point for Eastern. Number 5, Parsons back to serve for Eastern. He'll have a float serve up by Bowder. Speidel giving it to Murphy in the middle, and Murphy gets the kill. Point for Misericordia. Matt Churchill checking back in for the Cougars, subbing and serving for Billy Murphy. Churchill will have a float serve. And that's just out of bounds, point for Eastern. As number 9, Darren Lopez, heads back to serve. Topspin from Lopez. And Lopez gets the ace on number 7, Ryan Miller, point for Eastern. Eastern within 2, 22-20. Lopez continuing with the topspin. And that's out of bounds, point for the Cougars, as number 32, Brian Ross, heads back to serve. Float serve from Ross, up by Lopez, going out to Holbert. And he will get the kill as Number 8, Jordan Speidel, has a net violation on the block. Point for Eastern, as number 15, Noah Westbrook, heads back to serve. Eastern within 2, 23-21. Float serve, up by Bowder. Speidel giving it to Ross in the back row. And Ross will get the kill off the hands of number 6, Nicholas Holbert. And it's set point number 1 for Misericordia, 24-21, as number 23, Caleb Bowder, is back to serve. And Bowder will end set number 1 on an ace. Set number 1 ends 25, Misericordia to Eastern's 21. Misericordia leads 1-0.
Are you here for all the games?
Welcome back as we get ready for set number 2. Gonna take a quick look at the stats for set number 1. For Eastern, Lopez hitting an 889, Knob hitting 1,000, Westbrook hitting in the negatives of 286, Smith hitting a 333. On the Misericordia side of things, Matt Lavin hitting 500, Billy Murphy hitting 1,000, Caleb Bowder hitting a negative 200, Brian Ross at 600, and Ryan Miller at 250. For match number 2, Eastern will be on the right side of your screen in the white jerseys, Misericordia on the left in the blue. We start off with number 6, Nicholas Holbert, back to serve for the Eagles. As he'll serve out of bounds, but joining him on the court is number 12, Christian Knob, number 9, Darren Lopez, number 5, Cameron Parsons, number 22, Anthony Smith, number 15, Noah Westbrook, and number 12, Christian Knob. And back serving for Misericordia is number 7, Ryan Miller. He'll have a topspin, and he'll get the ace on number 6, Nicholas Holbert. Point for Misericordia. Joining Miller on the floor is number 8, Jordan Speidel, number 6, Connor Westerfield, number 32, Brian Ross, number 15, Billy Murphy, and outside. Number 3, Jason Campbell, as Miller continues to serve. Lopez going back out to Lopez, and Lopez gets the kill, point for Eastern. As number 22, Anthony Smith, heads back to serve for the Eagles. Misericordia has a 2-1 lead. Float from Smith. Spidel giving it to Murphy, and Murphy with a great turn back to 1, point for Misericordia. Checking to serve for Billy Murphy, number 23, Caleb Bowder. He heads back to serve. Bowder will have a topspin. It's up by Holbert. Roll shot by Holbert. Spidel giving it back to Ross. And Ross will get the kill off of Holbert. Point for Misericordia. Bowder continuing to serve. And he'll have a service error, point for the Eagles, as number 5, Cameron Parsons, heads back to serve. Parsons with a topspin, up by Westerfield. Spidel giving it to Lavin, and Lavin is blocked by number 15, Westbrook. Point for Eastern. Parsons continuing to serve. Up by Westerfield. Spidel giving it out to Campbell, and Campbell gets the kill. Point for Misericordia. Number 32, Brian Ross, back to serve for the Cougars. Float serve up by Lopez. Parsons giving it back to Lopez, and Lopez gets the kill down the line. Point for the Eagles. Lopez back to serve. Lopez will have a topspin. Up by Miller. Spidel out to Campbell. Campbell's shot is wide, point for the Eagles, as Lopez continues to serve. Topspin for Lopez. That's out of bounds, point for Misericordia, as Misericordia takes back the lead, 6-5. Number 3, Jason Campbell back to serve. He'll have a float serve, up by Lopez. Going back to Westbrook, and Westbrook gets the kill. Assist Parsons, point Eastern, as Westbrook will head back to serve. Float serve from Westbrook. And Westbrook will get the ace on number 7, Ryan Miller, point for Eastern, as Eastern takes the lead 7-6. Float again. Lavin with the tip over, dug by Westbrook, going to Smith, off the hands of Lavin. Miller able to make a dig, back to Ross in the back row, dug by Lopez, and Ross gets the kill out of right back, point for Misericordia. Number 13, Matt Lavin, back to serve for the Cougars. Float serve up by Holbert, over, and Billy Murphy gets the overpass kill, point for Misericordia. Lavin continuing to serve. Up by Holbert. Going to Lopez back row, who tips it. Tips it into the net. Point for Misericordia. They extend their lead by 2, 9-7 here in set number 2. Number 13, Matt Lavin, continuing to serve. Up by Lopez. Going out to Holbert, and Holbert gets the kill. Point for Eastern. Number 12, Christian Knob back to serve. Topspin up by Westerfield to Murphy. Murphy's dug and it's over and out of bounds. Point for the Cougars. Kill Billy Murphy. Assist Jordan Speidel as Jordan Speidel heads back to serve. Misericordia up 10-8. A float serve, and that's into the net. Point for Eastern. Number 6, Nicholas Holbert back to serve for Eastern. He'll a float serve. Up by Westerfield. Out to Brian Ross. Up by Holbert. Out to Lopez. Lopez is blocked. He covers himself. Parsons takes it over on 2. Speidel to Murphy. And Murphy's tip is out of bounds. Point for the Eagles. Service error from Nicholas Holbert. Point for Misericordia. Seven, Ryan Miller back to serve for the Cougars. Thompson from Miller. By Knob, going out to Lopez. And Lopez gets the kill off the hands of Murphy and Ross. Point Eagles as number 22, Anthony Smith, heads back to serve. Tied at 11-11 here in set number 2. And he'll have a service error. Point for Misericordia. Number 23, Caleb Bowder, subbing in for Misericordia to serve for Billy Murphy. Bowder will have a top spin. And he'll get an ace off the platform of Holbert. Point for the Cougars. Bowder continuing to serve. He'll have a top spin. Up by Holbert. Tip over by Westbrook. Scramble play on Misericordia's side, and Campbell's swing is out of bounds. Point for Eastern. Number 5, Cameron Parsons, back to serve for Eastern. Top spin, up by Miller to Lavin, and Lavin gets the kill. Assists Speidel. Point Cougars is number 32, Brian Ross, heads back to serve. Ross will have a float serve. Up by Holbert. Parsons keeping it alive. Lopez shoots it into the net. Point for the Cougars. Eastern will take their first timeout of set number 2, trailing 15-12. And we continue with set number 2. Misericordia up 15 to the Eagles 12 as number 32 Brian Ross continues to serve. Float serve from Ross, up by Lopez, back to Lopez, dug by Ross, spiral to Lavin, and Lavin will have a hitting error as he hits the net with his hand, point for Eastern. Number 9, Darren Lopez, back to serve. Serve is out of bounds, point for the Cougars. Number 3, Jason Campbell, back to serve. Float serve from Campbell. Up by Knob, going out to Holbert, and Holbert swings out of bounds, point for Misericordia, as number 3, Jason Campbell, continues to serve. Up by Knob. Tip by Westbrook, and that'll be good for a kill, point for Eastern. As number 15, Noah Westbrook, heads back to serve. Float by Westbrook, up by Campbell, to Lavin, dug by Westbrook. Parsons giving it out to Holbert. He tips, and that'll be good for a kill, point for Eastern. Westbrook continues to serve. Float serve up by Westerfield. Spidle taking it over on 2 and gets the kill. Point for Misericordia. Number 13, Matt Lavin, back to serve. He'll have a float serve up by Knob. Going to Lopez in the back, he tips it, up by Campbell. Spidle out to Miller, dug by Lopez. Going out to Holbert, high off the hands. But there's a net violation called on number 8, Jordan Spidle, point for Eastern. Number 12, Christian Knob, back to serve. Top spin, that's just outside the line, point for Misericordia, as Jordan Spidle heads back to serve. Spidle with a float, up by Lopez, going to Smith, who tips it, up by Westerfield with a pancake. Ross swinging, dug by Lopez, over on 2 by Parsons, and Parsons will get the kill, point for Eastern. Eastern within 2, Misericordia up 19-17. Float serve by Holbert. Spidle out to Ross, and Ross's attack is out of bounds, point for Eastern, as Eastern pulls within 1, 19-18, as Holbert continues to serve. Up by Miller, Spidle to Murphy. Murphy gets the kill, point for Misericordia. Number 7, Ryan Miller, back to serve. Miller will have a top spin. And that'll be a service error, point for Eastern, as number 22, Anthony Smith, heads back to serve for the Eagles. Float serve up by Westerfield. Spidle out to Campbell, and Campbell's attack is out of bounds as it hits the antenna first, point for Eastern, and we're tied up 20-20 in set number 2. Float serve from Smith, up by Miller. Speidel keeping it alive. Ross attacking and getting the kill off the hands of Lopez. Point for the Cougars as number 23, Caleb Bowder, subs in to serve for Murphy. Misericordia up 21-20. Again, sets played to 25, win by 2. Misericordia up 1 set to none, best of 5. Top spin from Bowder. Up by Holbert, going out to Lopez. And Lopez gets the kill as the block is out of bounds. Point for Eastern, and we're tied back up at 21-21. Toss in from Parsons. Speidel giving it out to Campbell. Campbell is dug by Holbert. Lopez running it down. Holbert over, setting it over. Lavin tipping it. Scramble play. Eagles unable to keep it alive. Point for Misericordia. Misericordia up 22-21 as Ross is back to serve. He'll have a float serve. Up by Knob, going back to Lopez. And Lopez will get the kill on the right side. Point for Eastern as we're tied up 22-22. Number 9, Lopez back to serve. He'll have a top spin. Up by Miller. Speidel giving it to Lavin. He'll tip it, dug by Smith. Speidel giving it back over on 1. Holbert tipping on the outside, and he's blocked by Speidel. Point for Misericordia. As number 3, Jason Campbell, heads back to serve for the Cougars. Float serve. Going out to Holbert. And Holbert will get a kill on the outside. Point for Eastern as we're tied up at 23. Number 15, Noah Westbrook, back to serve. Float serve from Westbrook, and that serve brushes the antenna, so it's out of bounds. Point for the Cougars, and it's set point number 1. 24-23 as number 21, Matt Churchill, checks in to serve. Float serve from Churchill. Up by Holbert, going to Smith. Smith is dug. Scramble play on Misericordia's side, unable to keep the ball alive. Tied back up at 24 as number 12, Christian Knob, heads back to serve. Float serve up by Westerfield, going out to Miller. And Miller gets the kill on the outside, and it'll be set point number 2 for Misericordia as number 8, Jordan Speidel, heads back to serve. Speidel with the float, up by Lopez. Going out to Holbert, he tips it, dug by Westerfield. Speidel out to Miller, who tips it. And that'll be Eastern's point. 25-25, must win by 2. Number 6, Holbert back to serve. Up by Campbell. Speidel back to Miller. And Miller gets the kill. Point for Misericordia. Number 7, Ryan Miller back to serve as it's set point number 3, 26-25. Miller will have a top spin. That's out of bounds, point for Eastern, tied back up at 26. Number 22, Anthony Smith, back to serve. He'll have a float up by Westerfield. Spidel giving it to Ross. And Ross's ball is kept alive. And Jason Campbell getting the solo block on number 5, Cameron Parsons. Set point number 4. It's number 23, Caleb Bowders, subs in to serve. 27-26. Misericordia's set point. Thompson from Bowder. That's a service error, point Eastern, as we're tied back at 27-27. Again, must win by 2 as Parsons heads back to serve. Float serve up by Westerfield to Lavin, and Lavin's attack is long, point for Eastern, as they'll have their first set point. Eastern up 28-27. Number 10, Gabe Perez, subbing in for Christian Knob on the Eastern side. As Parsons back to serve, float serve, up by Miller. Spidel giving it out to Campbell. Campbell is dug and over on 1. Westerfield to Spidel to Lavin, and Lavin gets the kill in the middle. Tied back up at 28. As number 32, Brian Ross, is back to serve for Misericordia. Up by Knob to Westbrook, and Westbrook is blocked by number 13, Matt Lavin. Point Misericordia. Set point number 5, 29-28. Ross continuing to serve. Up by Holbert. Going back to Lopez. And Lopez is blocked by Campbell and Lavin. Misericordia wins set number 2, 30-28, leading the match 2-0. we're back in set number 3. Misericordia leads Eastern 2-0. Taking a look at the match as a whole, in the second set, Eastern hitting a 200 as a team, Misericordia hitting a 152 as a team. Matt Lavin hitting an 091, Billy Murphy hitting an astonishing 714, Ryan Miller hitting a 222, Caleb Bowder in the negatives, same with Jason Campbell in the negatives. On the Eastern side, you have Lopez hitting a 500, Westbrook in the negatives, Smith hitting a 167, Parsons with a 250, and Holbert with a 250. Misericordia will be on the right in the blue jerseys, Eastern on the left in the white. On the floor for Misericordia, back to serve, number 8, Jordan Speidel, number 15, Billy Murphy, number 7, Ryan Miller, number 32, Brian Ross, libero, number 6, Connor Westerfield, and number 3, Jason Campbell. On the court for Eastern, we have a new libero, number 12, Christian Knob, number 9, Darren Lopez, number 10, Gabe Perez, number 22, Anthony Smith, number 5, Cameron Parsons, and number 6, Nicholas Holbert. Speidel with a topspin, up by Holbert. Parsons keeping it alive. Dug by Westerfield to Murphy. Murphy's blocked. Westerfield with a cover dig. Going out to Ross on the outside. Ross is dug over on one. Murphy swings and gets the kill on the overpass. Point for Misericordia as they start out set number 3, 1-0. Speidel continuing to serve with a float. Knob over on one, and Miller swings and hits the tape. Point for Eastern. Number 22, Anthony Smith, back to serve for Eastern. Of a float. Up by Miller. Speidel back to Miller. He's blocked and that ball's out of bounds. Point for Misericordia. As number 7, Ryan Miller, heads back to serve. Topspin from Miller. Up by Lopez. Parsons dumps it over. Westerfield is there, but unable to do anything. Point for Eastern. Tied up 2-2. As number 5, Cameron Parsons, heads back to serve. Float serve from Parsons. Up by Campbell. Ball handling error called on number 15, Billy Murphy, as Eastern takes their first lead of this set. 3-2 as Parsons continues to serve. Float serve up by Westerfield. Speidel keeping it alive. Campbell with the swing. No block. Point for the Cougars. Number 21, Matt Churchill, checking in to serve for Billy Murphy. Tied at 3-3. Churchill have a float serve. Up by Lopez. To Westbrook. He's blocked, covered by Lopez. Tipped over by number 10, Gabe Perez, but Brian Ross is there to block. Point for the Cougars. As number 21, Matt Churchill, continues to serve. Float from Churchill, up by Lopez. Parsons back to Lopez, and Lopez is dug by Miller. Speidel tipping it over, dug by Lopez, going back to Lopez again, and Lopez successful this time. Point for Eastern. Number 9, Darren Lopez, back to serve for the Eagles. He'll have a topspin. That's into the net. Point for the Cougars. The Cougars take back the lead, 5-4. Float from Brian Ross. Up by Holbert. Going out to Holbert. Dug by Ross. Spidle on 2, and that's out of bounds, point 4 Eastern. Number 15, Noah Westbrook, back to serve for the Eagles. He'll have a float serve. Up by Lavin. Spidle out to Campbell. And Campbell gets the kill down the line. Point 4, Misericordia. Number 3, Jason Campbell heading back to serve for the Cougars. He'll have a float serve up by Lopez. Parsons back to Perez. And Perez gets the kill off the block of Ryan Miller, point 4 Eastern. Tied at 6-6 here in set number 3. Do or die set here for the Eastern Eagles. Float serve up by Miller, going out to Miller. He tips it and gets the kill, point 4 the Cougars. Lavin back to serve. Lavin will have a float serve. Misericordia with a 7-6 lead, up by Lopez. Parsons giving it out to Holbert, and Holbert gets the kill as the ball trickles down the front of Spidle, point 4 the Eagles, tied back up 7-7. Number 6, Nicholas Holbert, back to serve. He'll have a float serve up by Campbell, but that goes back and out of bounds. Ace for number 6, Nicholas Holbert, as the Eagles continue to serve. Up by Campbell. Spidle getting it out to Miller. Miller is blocked, he covers himself. Westerfield giving it to Spidle on the right. Spidle dug by Knob, out to Lopez on the out. High off the hands, Campbell running it down. Miller unable to get the scramble play over on 3, point 4 Eastern, as their lead extends by 2. Up by Campbell. Spidle out to Miller, and Miller gets the kill, point 4 Misericordia. Spidle back to serve for the Cougars. Up by Holbert. Parsons over on 2, dug by Campbell. Back to Miller, and Miller gets the kill on the right side, point 4 Misericordia. Spidle continuing to serve as we're tied back up 9-9. He'll have a float up by Holbert. Holbert shanks it into the stands, point 4 Misericordia. Misericordia takes a 10-9 lead. Spidle with the float. Up by Knob, going out to Lopez. Dug by Spidle over on 1. Holbert there with the dig. Going back to Lopez, who tips it. Dug by Spidle. Westerfield, second contact. Out to Ross on the out. And Ross gets the kill off the side of the hands of number 5, Cameron Parsons. Point Cougars. Spidle continuing to serve, as Misericordia takes an 11-9 lead. Another float serve up by Knob, going back out to Lopez. And that block is out of bounds, point 4 Eastern. Kill for number 9, Darren Lopez. Number 22, Anthony Smith, heading back to serve for the Eastern Eagles. Float for Smith, up by Westerfield. Spidle giving it out to Ross on the outside, and that ball dances down the line and out of bounds, point 4 the Eagles. Smith continuing to serve, 11-11, service error. Cougars back with the lead as number 7, Ryan Miller, heads back to serve. Miller with a top spin. And that's service error, point for the Eagles, as number 5, Cameron Parsons, heads back to serve. Have a float serve up by Campbell. Spidle out to Campbell. Campbell wins that one-on-one, point for Misericordia. Number 21, Matt Churchill, subbing in for Billy Murphy to serve. So Misericordia takes a 13-12 lead. Float serve from Churchill, up by Lopez. Going out to Perez. Tight ball, blocked by Campbell. Point Cougars to take a 14-12 lead. And Eastern will take their first timeout of set number 3. Back here in set number 3, Matt Churchill continuing to serve as the Cougars have a 2-point lead, 14-12 in the do-or-die set for the Eastern Eagles. Float serve up by Knob. Parsons giving out to Perez, dug by Spidle. Churchill giving second ball out to Ross, and Ross is blocked by Westbrook. And Lopez, point for Eastern, as Lopez heads behind the line to serve. He'll have a top spin. Up by Campbell. Spidle running it down, giving it to Ross. Dug by Lopez. Parsons giving it to Perez. He tips it. Dug by Ross. Spidle out to Campbell. Campbell is blocked and it lands deep in bounds. Point for Eastern. And we're tied back up at 14. We have a substitution on the Misericordia side. Number 23, Caleb Bowder, checking in for number 3, Jason Campbell. Number 9, Darren Lopez, continuing to serve. Scramble play, dug by Westbrook. Going back to Perez, dug by Westerfield. Spidle running it down, giving it out to Bowder on the outside, who tips it over on one. Caleb keeping it alive, Spidle to Ross. Ross is dug by Knob. And Misericordia wins that rally, 15-14, as number 23, Caleb Bowder, heads back to serve. Number 32, Brian Ross, back to serve for the Cougars. Float serve, up by Hulbert. Going back to Perez, dug by Miller, over on 2 by Spidle. Spidle with the overpass kill, point for Misericordia. Number 32, Brian Ross, continuing to serve. Float serve from Ross, up by Hulbert. Parson keeps it alive, but Spidle takes advantage and gets the kill, point for Misericordia. Ross continuing to serve, Misericordia 17-14. Up by Knob, going to Westbrook. Westbrook dug by Miller. Ross trying to run it down, unable to get there. Point for Eastern. Kill by number 15, Noah Westbrook, as he will head behind the line to serve for the Eagles. Westbrook will have a float serve. And that drops outside the line, point for Misericordia. Number 23, Caleb Bowder, checking out of the game as Jason Campbell checks back in. Float serve for Campbell. Up by Holbert, going to Smith, and Smith gets the kill as Matt Lavin is unable to make that block. Point for the Eagles. Float serve from Perez. Up by Miller. Going to Ross, back row. Dug by Perez. Going to Lopez, back row. Dug by Westerfield. Spidle out to Miller. Miller's block. Westerfield gets a hand on it to cover. Blocked by number 22, Anthony Smith. Point Eagles. Number 10, Perez continues to serve. Up by Westerfield. Spidle out to Miller. And Miller is blocked one-on-one by number 5, Cameron Parsons, as Eastern ties it back up 18-18 as Perez continues to serve. And that ball is out of bounds. Point for the Cougars as number 13, Matt Lavin, heads back to serve. Cougars up 19-18 as Lavin will have a float serve. Up by Holbert. Going back to Holbert. Did he find the hands? No touch call. Point Cougars as Holbert's ball is out of bounds. Lavin continuing to serve, 2018. Float serve. Up by Lopez. And that ball drops over and out of bounds. 21-18 now the score, and Eastern will take their second and final timeout here in set number 3. Back here in set number 3, Eastern taking both of their timeouts for this set. Do or die set as Misericordia with the lead, 21-18. Lavin with the float, up by Lopez. Going out to Holbert, and Holbert gets the kill off the hands of number 8, Jordan Spidle. Point Eastern as Holbert will head back to serve for the Eagles. (21-19) with a float serve, up by Miller. Spidle giving it to Murphy. Murphy's blocked, covered by Miller, going out to Miller. And Miller's attack is long, point for Eastern. 21-20 as Eastern pulls within 1. Holbert continues to float. Up by Campbell. Spidle out to Miller, who tips it and gets the kill as the tip drops just behind the block. Number 8, Jordan Spidle back to serve as Misericordia takes a 2-point lead, 22-20. Float serve, up by Holbert. It's going out to Lopez. Off the hands, Ross with the dig. Spidle out to Ross. And Ross is blocked by number 22, Anthony Smith. 22-21 as number 22 Smith is back to serve. Smith will have a float serve. Up by Miller. Speidel back to Miller. And Miller is blocked by the Westbrook-Lopez duo. Tied at 22 now. Do or die set for Eastern. Sets played to 25, win by 2. As 22, Anthony Smith serves at 22-22. Up by Miller. Speidel giving it out to Ross. Ross is dug by Holbert. Going out to Lopez. Dug by Ross. Speidel back out to Ross. And Ross gets the kill off the hands of Parsons. Point Cougars as number 7, Ryan Miller heads back to serve, and Caleb Bowder checks back in front row for the Cougars. 23-22, Ryan Miller with the top spin. Up by Holbert. Going to Westbrook. Westbrook dug by Miller. Speidel back to Ross. Ross is blocked. He covers. Murphy tries to dig it out of the net, but scoops the bottom of the net along with his platform. Net violation. Point Eastern. Tied back up 23-23 as number 5, Cameron Parsons, heads back to serve for the Eagles. Float serve from Parsons. Up by Miller. Speidel to Murphy. Murphy with the kill out of the middle, and it will be match point number 1 for Misericordia, 24-23, as Matt Churchill checks in to serve for Billy Murphy. Float serve by Churchill, up by Lopez. It's going to go back to Lopez. High off the hands, Ross with the dig. Speidel out to Bowder. And Bowder's attack is long and out of bounds. Point for Eastern as we're tied up at 24-24. Lopez back to serve for the Eagles. He'll have a top spin. Up by Miller. Speidel giving it back to Ross. And Ross gets the kill off the hands of Westbrook. It's match point number 2 for the Cougars, 25-24. Float from Ross. Up by Holbert. Going to Westbrook, and Westbrook gets the kill. Tied back up at 25. As Westbrook heads back to serve for Eastern. Smith checks back in front row. Westbrook will have a float. Up by Miller. Speidel out to Bowder. Bowder dug by Westbrook. Going out to Holbert. Holbert is blocked by Speidel and Lavin. Match point number 3, 26-25. As number 3, Jason Campbell subs back in for the Cougars, and he'll head behind the line to serve. Float serve for Campbell. Up by Holbert, going to Smith. Smith finds the high hands of Lavin. Point for Eastern as they stay alive, tied up at 26-26 as Perez heads back to serve. Float serve for Perez, up by Westerfield. Speidel out to Miller. And Miller gets the corner. Point for Misericordia as number 13, Matt Lavin, heads back to serve. Match point number 4, 27-26. Float serve, up by Holbert. It's gonna go out to Holbert. Roll shot, dug by Campbell. Speidel out to Miller. Miller is blocked, and that ball drops out of bounds. And Misericordia takes set number 3, 28-26, and sweeps the match 3-0, advancing to 2-2 in the conference. Be sure to check back in with MCN 87 at 8 o'clock tonight for the match against Stevenson. Lauren Apetz, I'll see you then.